Tēnā koutou katoa, no mai haere mai ki tēnei hui, te iwi rangatane, tēnā koutou, te konahira papaoia, tēnā koutou, haere mai, haere mai, haere mai. So welcome to the meeting, and this is Community Committee, and we are being live streamed. And so I would like to start with an opening karakia. Tū taua mai runga, tū taua mai rara, tū taua mai roto, tū taua mai waho. Ke tau ai te Māori tū, te Māori ora, ki te katoa. Homie, huie, taikie. Thank you. Now, we will start just by going through the health and safety requirements, because we've got some members of the public here. So they're on the screen. If you hear the alarm, please leave by the nearest fire exit, marked by the little green running person. And our evacuation area is the clock tower in Te Maraohine. No smoking in any council building. Defibrillator, should we need it, is at customer services on the ground floor. And if there are any near miss or incidents, please report to the committee administrators, who are Sarah, Sina and Nika. If you are participating online, please keep your camera turned on and your microphone muted, unless addressing the meeting. As far as I know, we don't have any councillors online at the moment, but we do have the CE online. If you're presenting, please state your name before speaking and use the microphone. If the red light is on, like this, it means your mic's on. And that, I think, are the opening instructions. So we will move on to the apologies. So we have apologies from the Mayor. Oh, who's not on council business. Are you leaving? Sorry a minute.
Apologies, Madam Chair, I'm in and out, but leave me as early departure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. We also have apologies from Councillor Finlay for late arrival and early departure. Is that? Yep. And Councillor Meehan.
Madam Chair, I'll be early departure, possibly. And Lou Finlay will be an apology for the day.
An apology for the whole day?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, Madam
Deputy
Chair.
Mayor, yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will be popping out for early departure, but returning because I'm on council business. Thank you. Later this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, I will move we receive the apologies then, if we've got them all typed up. Seconded by Councillor Hancock, and we will take a vote. Thank you. And that is carried, 12 votes for and none against. I haven't been notified of any additional items. Are there any? Okay. Are there any declarations of interest?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Wood, yeah.
I'll declare an interest in public comment from the Cancer Society.
Oh, okay. Okay, that brings us on to public comment, but before we go into public comment, I just want to explain, we've got quite for us an unusual order of things today. So just so elected members are aware, we're taking public comment first on 2 items, and then those 2 items will be debated. Then we'll go on to some closeout reports, and then hopefully there'll be time for morning tea before we have our briefing. The briefing will be in the morning, and the reason for that is I'm aware that some members have to leave early this afternoon. I wanted it to be available for as many people as possible. Then this afternoon at 1 o'clock, we will have 4 presentations, and then we'll go on and do the work schedule. So we've organised it that way so that the presenters this afternoon have got a more definite time to come in, and also so that the members of the public that are making public comment get the items they're interested in debated first. So just if you're wondering about the unusual order, that's why. Okay, so that brings us on to public comment, and we've got 3 groups wanting to do public comment this morning. So first of all, we have Josie Guthrie from the Cancer Society, and your comment is on item 7, I believe. So welcome, Josie. I'm sure you know the score, but just make sure you're...
Sorry.
We don't want any health and safety incidents early on. Just make sure that you're close enough to the microphone, and start when you're ready. Thank you.
Awesome. Kia ora koutou. My name's Josephine. I'm a health promoter for the Cancer Society. It's a pleasure to be here today to speak on the draft health promotion policy. It's a super busy week at the Cancer Society this week because Daffodil Day's in 2 days. So I do apologise. I do have to leave straight after my public comment because I have to go teach 70, 50, under 5-year-olds some Daffodil Day crafts. So there's been concerns about local government meddling in health promotion as it's seen as them stepping into a realm outside of their scope as public officials. But as leaders and governing bodies of our communities, it is your responsibility to promote the social, economic, environmental and cultural well-being of said communities. This includes the health of the people who live in them. Health promotion involves not only educating and supporting our communities to live healthy lives, but also advocating and creating systems that reduce health risks. This draft health promotion policy is not only about reinforcing the messaging and objectives of these policies, but also creating a stepping stone towards a health in all policies approach to local government. Health promotion is not just about physical well-being, it encompasses a vast scope of social determinants. Council has a great opportunity to impact positive change on the lives of the communities you serve. I urge you to pass this policy onto consultation. I, as well as the community, look forward to providing feedback and recommendations on it so the Council has the best possibility of a strong and impactful policy. Thank you for your time.
Kia ora, Josie, thank you for that. Did you have time to answer any questions, if there are any of elected members? Thank you. Councillor Zabellin.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, Josie. With these policies that formerly have been 3 separate policies and looking to compile them together into a single health promotion, did you have a view on whether or not those policies are better separate or better together?
Yeah, absolutely. I think separately they are all very impactful and important, but I think putting them together kind of allows that the policies that aren't getting resourced as much or as much attention, I believe, they're going to get the same amount of attention as policies such as like the smoke-free, vape-free is getting, so that they're all making a good amount of change within our communities. I think it just brings to light the importance of each policy when you put them all together. It also means that we can collaborate within different parts of other policies as well, and that we can start thinking about health within other policies such as like environmental or events.
Right, thank you. And so if we were expanding the scope of the smoke-free, vape-free reference group as is proposed in the policy, that would lend itself to that more wholesome approach?
Yeah, absolutely. So health promotion itself, most health promoters are focusing on more than just one area of smoke-free. There are definitely health promoters that are that's their one focus, but they dabble in the other areas as well. And so I think putting them all together, it means that we can kind of work together better, and it means we can involve more parties involved as well.
Thank you, that's very helpful. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks, Josie. Just wanted to inquire around the monitoring of the impact that this policy could have, and what you might like to see by way of public awareness of and reporting of the monitoring of the impact.
Yep, I haven't actually thought about that too much. I was going to go through the policy and then give my submission and think about that more, give my recommendations. But Yeah, I think it's super important that the public knows, as well as council knows, how much impact these policies are actually having on us. So I think feedback's super important. Is that what kind of you're asking? Is like, sorry, I'm a bit confused about the question. Is it like what kind of impact we want to see, or what kind of?
It was
How would-
more around the visibility of that,
Okay.
which I think you have addressed. Thanks.
Right. Yeah. So I think it's super important. I think within communities that we are seeing that the council is making an impact, and so providing that getting the feedback from them, and then also providing the evidence that it's actually making the impact is super important. I hope that
Cool.
answers that question.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. That's the end of the questions, Josie, so thank you very much for your public comment. Okay, now I'd like to invite Julie Beckett from Te Whatu Ora to come and give her public comment on the same item. And Julie, you've got a PowerPoint? Yeah, okay, cool, thank you. So just make sure your microphone's on. That's good. And when you're ready.
Thank you. Kia ora koutou, ko Julie Beckett toku ingoa. I'm a smoke-free enforcement officer and a smoke-free vape-free health promoter from Te Whatu Ora. I've come to, oh, sorry, not used to this. Okay. So firstly, I just wanted to show profiles and maps that we've been doing, that we updated this month. And the maps show all the work that councils throughout the country have done building healthy public policy. Palmerston City Council, the leading, of course, with the bylaw and many icons on the map. We recently showed them last week at Local Government New Zealand and had really good engagement with councillors, mayors, and key stakeholders at the conference. The maps have been utilised really well, and there's about 6 councils on the map that are yet to develop policies, but we engaged with all of them at the conference, and they're keen to do so. So I just want to show you what the maps were about and how well they're being utilised, and how pleased we are with council's progress on building healthy public policy for our communities. And we also, 2 years ago, broke the maps down into regional clusters. So these are the 2 for mid-central, wider mid-central region, but we also have them for all the council regions throughout the Motu, and they were very popular with councils at the LGNZ. So as a result of the LGNZ, we sent emails out afterwards and attached links to the maps which are on the smokefree.org website. So they've proved to be quite encouraging for councils and also affirming of what councils are doing for their communities. So I just want to talk about vape retailers. So I'm not sure whether council are aware, there's 2 types of vape retailers. One are called a specialised vape retailer, SVR for short, and they're places like Shusha, Cosmic, and can be individual vape retailers that sit alongside dairies. Some of them are inside dairies, and that was before the legislation changed. They're not allowed to do that now. Sorry. So Palmerston North has about 32 SVRs throughout the district. All are within 1 kilometre of a school. They have to be approved by the Ministry of Health, and they're registered on a HARP website, which is quite hard to move around on and find things, but they have to be registered by the Ministry of Health. There was a lot of community concern, as you're probably aware, when the special vape retailers started popping up, because they were popping up by schools, marae, kohanga ECAs and kindies, and our communities are very concerned about the impact of those vape stores. So these SVRs, they're R18 stores, which means anyone under 18 is prohibited from going in the door. New regulations from September last year has said that new SVRs must not be set up within 300 metres of a school or marae, but really that legislation needs to go further to include kohangari or ESAs or in a lot of other early childhood centres. Oh, and just add to that, as part of my role as Smakeby officer, we get information each month letting us know how many retailers in our region have popped up, new ones. And at the moment, the Ministry of Health is declining half of the ones that are applying due to proximity to schools. 2 months ago, we had 3 retailers in our region decline due to proximity.
Sorry, Julie, just to let you know, your 3 minutes is up, so if you could just make some closing comments, that would be great. Thank you.
Sorry. Just one thing we've done to, as a response to a request from our communities, was we've developed a complaint poster for our communities there. So we heard from the police in Dannevirke that our communities didn't know how to make a complaint about vape retailers or tobacco retailers. So we designed these posters, and we also had a link on Palmerston City, on Mid-Central DHB's website and Whanganui, and these have a QR code on them that people can just scan with their phone, and it goes straight to a complaint form, comes straight to us as Smakeby officers. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Sorry to you there. We've open up now for questions from elected members. So first up we have Councillor Naylor.
Thank you, Julie. Just in regards to the vape stores and the legislation around limiting the location of those in terms of the proximity from schools, can you clarify, is that just for new stores or what's the approach for existing stores?
Yes, thank you. It never applied to existing stores, and it caused quite a bit of angst in our communities because it was stores were popping up, but they'd been pre-approved, and we as Smakeby officers don't know when those shops are coming up. So it's, yeah.
And do you have any suggested solution to that in terms of what council could do? Or?
Well, I did wonder. I don't know the full situation about it, but is there anything that council could do in the bylaw to around density of vape retailers? I did talk to a smoke-free coordinator from the far north, and she seemed to think that councils couldn't do anything. I understand the Minister Costello is looking at something to reduce the visibility, because like Shusha on Broadway, big glass windows, and kids walking past can see all the vapes, etc. So, but I'd really be keen to talk further about that if we could.
Yeah, thank you.
If we could find out more information, and also just to add, we've got one of the highest youth vaping rates in the world. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, there are no more questions, Julie, so thank you very much for your public comment.
Thank you.
So next we've got public comment from Rob Green, Nicola Quinn and Bill Forster, commenting on item 6, so you're welcome to come and take the chairs. You can probably only have one microphone on at once, I suspect. Oh, you'll be okay. All right. I am good. So welcome, and yeah, ready when you are.
Thank you, committee members, for the opportunity to speak in opposition to the proposal to construct a new public toilet at the end of Albert Street, adjacent to the entrance to the River Walkway. The proposed location is directly visible from the homes in Fairway Grove. We are residents from Fairway Grove. Myself, I'm owner of number 14 and 16, Bill and Liz Foster, number 8, Rob Green, number 10, and we're supported by Pete Balfour from number 12. While the other residents of Fairway Grove support our stance, they are unable to attend today. Following receipt of the report to the committee from council officers, we have prepared a written submission. I hope was pre-circulated to committee members, and assuming you've all read our submission, I'll focus on the key points of our opposition to the toilet block in the limited time available. Firstly, we believe the do-nothing option has not been adequately considered. There are already 5 public toilets along the pathway between the Riverside Drive entrance and Maxwell's Line, with an average spacing of 2 kilometres. This means that path users are no more than 1 kilometre from an existing toilet, which corresponds to approximately 15 minutes of walking time. The New Zealand Cycle Guide recommends toilets be provided at 30-minute cycle intervals, so the current situation more than meets the guide's recommendations. Improved signage could better direct pathway users to the existing toilets. For comparison, there are only 2 toilets along the entire 10-kilometre pathway between He Ara Kotahi and Linton. Also, the officer's report does not mention any specific public requests for a new toilet at the Albert Street entrance. Secondly, our engineering advice indicates that the wastewater flow from the intermittent use of a single cubicle toilet will not meet the council's own engineering standards, and there are no other connections to the length of the sewer in which the toilet would discharge. The very low and intermittent discharge flow could lead to blockages in the public sewer, creating a potential public health hazard and offensive odours. It is difficult to see how the toilet could obtain resource consent, given that it will not meet the engineering standards and would create unacceptable environmental effects, which are likely to be very difficult to mitigate. We can provide further clarification on this point if needed. Finally, we believe that the toilet will attract more antisocial behaviour and possibly freedom camping, with users potentially waiting until the toilets open in the morning. We already experience noise from barking dogs, speeding cars on Albert Street, rubbish being thrown onto our properties, people drinking and taking drugs in parked cars, and domestic disputes. The presence of a public toilet will likely attract more unwanted activity to the area. We also note recent comments by the Prime Minister regarding wasteful spending by local authorities. He suggested that council should focus on providing and maintaining basic infrastructure, so the funds set aside for this toilet block surely would be better spent fixing the myriad problems with the council's roads, water and wastewater systems. In closing, I would like to ask the councillors, would you be comfortable having a public toilet built just 15 metres from your front door, directly in your line of sight, affecting the view from your home? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicola. We'll open up for questions now, if that's okay. First question, Councillor Naylor.
Hi, thank you. In the written presentation that was provided to us, you've mentioned Aya Place toilets at the Haukiwhiru Scout Hall. I'm just wondering, is that toilet open and available to the public?
Yeah, our understanding is that it is open, yes.
Yeah.
It's a council, I think it's a council-owned building, so it should be on the council's asset register as a toilet.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for coming and presenting. I note in your verbal submission and in your written you said it's unacceptable for residents to have to look out their window at a public toilet facility. but I haven't heard an explanation in particular as to why. So I wonder if you might elaborate on what you think is unacceptable about having a public toilet in view, given many residents around the city have that exact situation.
Well, I guess the fact that we already live there and that there is a proposed public toilet, so when we moved in and bought our homes, there was no toilet there. The homes are built for views. They look over the golf course. And number 16 Fairway Grove in particular, the toilet will be very close and facing the homes. I think a lot of the other public toilets in Palmerston North are already existing and on parks and not necessarily facing towards homes.
Thank you, and I appreciate its closeness, but I'm just trying to get to what, so you believe it's unsightly, that's why you don't want to have it there, is that correct?
And the activity that it's likely to bring.
Thank you.
We already see the activity down in that area.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Just a quick question from me. The officer's report suggests that there is a toilet building on the golf course, just opposite the houses. Is that, I mean, I will ask the officers if that is a toilet building, but are you aware, is that a toilet building, and does that cause any problem?
No, there's no toilet there. My understanding it was an option that was considered in conjunction with the golf club, whereby there would be a toilet that opened on the golf club side for the golf club users and on the public side for the public. That went nowhere. There are two toilets on the golf course, quite a considerable distance from our homes, which we can't see. So there's nothing we can presently see. There's no plan for a toilet on that boundary.
There's a small, it looks from the maps, so there's a small building on the golf course.
It's a
at that point?
shelter.
It's a shelter, is it?
A shed for players to sit in while they're waiting to tee off on a hole.
Right. Okay, thanks for that clarification. Councillor Zabellin.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Good morning. Thank you for coming to talk to us. I just had two questions for you. One was you talked about more antisocial behaviour, and then you described what that behaviour is. I wondered if you could talk to me about the level of that nuisance and how impactful, how often, are people taking drugs in the car park outside your house? How often is that happening?
It's hard to know. I can say it's growing. It's been particularly noticeable at the additional nighttime activity. I mean, you have to expect that cars are going to park outside a house during the day for accessing the walkway. That's no issue with us. An issue for us is, rubbish being thrown and so on, but particularly at night there's been a noticeable increase recently in the number of vehicles coming down and parking for periods of time, doing whatever they're doing, and then sometimes speeding off. Whether the new seating areas attracted them, I don't know, but there's certainly been an increase in use down there.
Right, thank you very much. And just one other question was about public toilets more generally, not just the specific example, and your comments about city infrastructure and where our focus should be. And I'm just wondering what your views are in terms of, do you view public toilets and providing them as a core infrastructure council service, or whether that's something we should be cutting back on across the city?
I guess you could say they're core, but I think maintaining core infrastructure is more important than providing new infrastructure. There's plenty of problems with the current infrastructure, primarily water, wastewater, roading, maybe toilets. Then there is to need new ones, in my view.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for your comments. Just wondered if you'd given any consideration to the potential inclusion of a drinking fountain and whether or not that is something you had views on.
In place of the public toilet, do you mean?
You can think of it as in addition or in place of, or, just in general, would it be useful to have a drinking fountain in that location from your perspective?
Well, I guess you'd have to ask the users of the of the area, but we would have no opposition to a public drinking fountain. Madam Chair, could I just make two comments? One in...
Sorry, you can't really, no, as regards the process, but you might be able to weave them into an answer to a question.
It was.
I'll have a further
questions?
question then. Would you have one or two comments you'd like to make?
Just two comments to answer both your questions. One is the other public toilets in the town are either away from a cul-de-sac or can be fenced off, like the one at the walking bridge. Our public toilet, this proposed one, is actually in is part of a cul-de-sac and cannot be fenced off because our understanding from Bryce is that it's a public road, so it cannot be fenced off. So that was why we believe this toilet is different than. And we ask we don't think this is an elitist, exclusive area of Palmerston North problem. We don't believe any cul-de-sac in Palmerston North should have a public toilet. Thank you.
No further questions.
Cleverly done. Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for coming in to speak to this, and thank you for the additional information that you provided. I just want to be clear from some of your comments, which have been about your issues being about it facing towards home and in the line of sight. The officer's report provides multiple options. Do you have the same objections to all of those options?
No, we would love it to be on the other side of the stop bank. No problem at all, because then we wouldn't be able to see it. Our objection is that we can look directly at it, and the other options were very favourable to us.
So the officer's report talks about why the other side of the stop bank is not a likely option. Is there anything that could be done in your view that would mitigate that visual impact of the preferred option?
Well, I think we'd acknowledge the architectural attempts to make the toilet look better than some of the other edifices around town, and certainly it looks a little bit like the one down at the new bridge.
Yeah, Arukotahi.
But I think, as Nikki said, that's more the activity that it attracts that is our concern. Seeing those people and the behaviour that will only get worse that's already there.
And so to follow that, do you think there's anything that could be done to mitigate that behaviour or stop that behaviour? That's already an existing problem. You think it's going to get worse. So what can we do to stop the behaviour that's happening down there?
Well, I guess you can't probably stop the existing behaviour that's there unless you shut the access to the walkway, which is clearly not practical. I guess by not putting a toilet there might help from it getting worse.
So the antisocial behaviour that's happening at the moment, do you report that to council or the police, and what happens then?
Well, I've called the police twice in the last 8 months, probably 8 or 9 months, and they come and help. They come and deal with the behaviour.
Okay. Good. Okay. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Hancock.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks very much for coming in. Just going on from Councillor Bowen's questions, and I think it was a comment from you, Nikki, just in terms of, I picked up that one of the issues is that the toilet actually faces the residents. If that was orientated towards the river, would that be helpful? Bearing in mind that across in the golf course there's actually a building that actually sits there, which may in fact actually look similar to a toilet. Would that support some sort of resolution?
I think it's really the location and the proximity of the toilet to the 16 Fairway Grove in particular.
But if council actually orientated it so that the door to the toilet was actually facing towards the river, and with appropriate plantings around the facility, would that support some kind of resolution to it?
We object to the public toilet being built.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. The Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, thanks for coming in, and of course you've come and talked to me about it as well. Just a question that Councillor Bowen, and because I'm not going to be here a little bit later, around the other locations, which is option 3. It doesn't say anywhere that we can't do that. So I don't know where that was coming from. I don't know if the officers can.
The officers can respond to that. Yeah. They're coming up next.
Okay, thank you.
Did you have another question, Mr. Mayor? Okay, thank you very much for coming and making public comment and for being available to answer so many questions. And we'll get you to take a seat in the gallery now. And the item that you're interested in will be coming up next. Thank you. So we'll just, I'll move that we receive all of the public comments for information. Seconded Councillor Hancock. And we will take a vote on that, please. And that is carried, 12 votes for and none against. Thank you. So I'd like to invite Rob Hosking and Bill Carswell to come and present item 6, please. Okay, and Darren as well. Thank you. So, floor is yours, gentlemen.
Kia ora, councillors. Firstly, just wanted to acknowledge the residents' submission. I've been working closely with them on this topic for a wee while now, and had continued communication with them. And yeah, it's great that they were able to come along to this meeting and do a submission as well. Yes, as you'll see, invited Aaron to sit at the table as well. A lot of the demand data and why this location and what's sort of supporting that is a piece of work driven from Parks. So I thought it would be useful for Aaron to be able to answer questions you may have in that sense. Also, just introducing my colleague Bill. He has presented once or twice here before in my absence. Bill is one of the leaders in the property team, and he's going to be taking over the acting property role once I depart council. So I thought it would be useful for him to be here as well for this. In respect to the matter at hand, look, relatively happy to take the paper as read. We've tried quite hard to canvass options and you know, authentically explored things. As was previously stated, yes, can confirm the building on the golf club does not have a toilet in there at the moment, but that was definitely something we were considering and looking at maybe an alternative option we could do there. In respect to the Mayor's question and some of the other location options, the one on top of the stock bank basically is a no-go. The chances of us getting a consent for that is 0 out of 10, probably. In terms of on the other side of the river, which I acknowledge is the residents' preferred option, that is also very unlikely. We have had conversations directly with Horizons in that sense to explore that option and look at how valid that is. And whilst they can't legally tell us that we will not get a consent because we haven't actually lodged a consent application, they did make it pretty clear that that was pretty unlikely to actually get a consent anyway. Plus, it does also raise some of those added risks and concerns. It is on the other side of the stock bank, so it really is not visual at all from anyone. And some of the concerns about antisocial behaviour, I suggest that that may actually increase the likelihood of that if it was on the other side as well. Granted, not at the end of the cul-de-sac necessarily, but in the general area. Probably the last comment I would say is that the concerns around aesthetics. That was something that was pretty important to us as officers to try and address, and we have tried quite hard to look at different ways we can do that through plantings. I guess what was once public toilets, which were those sort of big concrete boxes, as councils will be aware, life's moved on a little bit since then. We're actually, there's a lot more emphasis on aesthetics and trying to make them look visually a bit more appealing. And we've tried quite hard for that and even looked to produce a concept that you'll see attached to this. It'll look relatively like that. This is ordinarily the kind of decision that actually sits within my delegation to make a decision on, but given the strong opposition, thought it was best to bring it through this chamber and test it through yourselves. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Bryce. And just to acknowledge that this is your last meeting, we wish you all the best for your new role, and we're sorry to lose you from here. Now, in terms of questions, I've just got a couple. One is, have we explored the do nothing option?
We have explored it. It probably wasn't explicit through the report. The main driver for the toilet going there is driven from demand and the increased users in the area, and in particular the increased use of Albert Street through into the river walkway. We're obviously looking to respond to that demand, and Aaron can build on this if required, but do nothing option essentially would not be responding to that in any way, and hence the third option, instead of being a do nothing option, was instead suggesting we should try and look again at alternative options, because ultimately that demand is still there, so just not building one may create a bit of a gap.
Okay, and can you indicate how you've determined that there's a demand for a toilet there?
Over to you, Aaron.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Mr Mayor and councillors. Aaron Phillips, Activity Manager for the Parks team. Most of the demand assessment is covered in the background section of the report, but I did write down a few notes expecting that this would be a question. As per section 2.2 of your report, in terms of the locations relatively recently surveyed, it was the second highest use river entrance of those that we surveyed. We have been working quite diligently over the last 5 to 10 years to develop the Manawatu River Park and improve facilities, and toilet satisfaction is one of the kind of measures of how people perceive that particular park. During the development, you will see in the report that in 2016 the public toilet program was brought to you, and it was identified as a location back then. I appreciate that number of you wouldn't have been present at that time, but it was identified as a location back then, and that was reviewed as part of the 2023 asset management plan development, which looked at where gaps might be considered. This particular location is 1.5 kilometres in either direction to the nearest toilet, and typically we would use walking distances rather than perhaps the suggested cycling distances as access for toilets. Not stated in the report explicitly, but Waka Kotahi's guide to pedestrian speeds is about 1 metre per second for older people or younger people, and it goes up to about 1.2 metres per second for general population walking. So that equates to about a 20 to 25 minute walking distance to the nearest toilet from that location. Of course, you halve that if you happen to be already part way along the journey to that toilet, but at that particular spot, it is about a 20-minute walk, or 25 if you're younger or got a few mobility issues. That particular location, in terms of development of the river park, you will have seen the adventure play space under the trees at Albert Street that featured in the Palmy Proud magazine recently, and it has the bike humps and jumps that are very popular. So there is a lot of, we've observed, except that it's anecdotal, but our observation are it's very well used, and in particular I've noticed personally when using the end of the Albert Street as a starting point for a walking journey, lots of families start and end from there and take their bicycles down to that area, play in that area generally, and then leave again. So we think there is demand. We think the community would use the toilet well. We don't think it would be a white elephant, for want of a better phrase, in terms of use. And that was the rationale. It wasn't. To reassure you that there was some rationale put to the thought of the location. It wasn't spur of the moment. Yeah.
Thank you, Aaron. The Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, guys. Just on the Chair's question, Aaron, and you've explained that it's more gut feel than you haven't got any survey data, you haven't got walking groups, you haven't got people that said we want a toilet there.
I neglected, and I had written in my notes, we have, the comms team have confirmed that through social media, there's been various requests for toilets
Yeah,
in
not,
those
not
locations.
social media, like you haven't had a
we-
petition or somebody's come in and said they want a toilet at Albert Street?
We had, during the development of the age-friendly plan that's underway this week, this year with community development, completely unprompted, there was a request during the preparation of that plan for the toilet at that location.
So if I ask the seniors reference group, they'll confirm that.
I got that through the officer that was preparing the plan. I couldn't tell you whether that came through the senior reference group or other
So
contributors.
it's more, it's informal.
I guess, yes, okay, yes.
Cool. Second one is, and thank you to Bryce, just to option 3 around other locations. And I did actually ask officers before it got to the chamber whether there was opportunities on this, and you've explained on page 14 where we have the other options. So obviously the 2 connected to the stock bank are no-goes, but what's happened to the golf club discussions?
That was definitely that was the first option we looked at, and we did look quite closely with that. We had a couple of conversations directly with the golf club. And from a asset investment standpoint, it was going to be a very similar number to building a brand new toilet to investing into that building, acknowledging that we don't own that building and we would not. So it was very similar in that sense. We would be needing to lease the land under it, and there would be we would need to formalise an entrance into that. So currently it's got a fence. It's the golf club, so we would actually have to look to formalise that as well. But yeah, you were looking anecdotally around $300,000 of investment into that, just to actually turn it into a toilet and get it to where it needed to.
So you didn't talk to the golf club about a shared ownership around, similar to what we've done at Fitzherbert Park, where we've got a shared toilet that's for the public and for use?
Yep. And so the options that got explored was essentially toilets going both ways. So there'd be one facing into the golf club, one facing out. The outwards facing one would be a public toilet, the inwards one would be for users. We explored a lot of those kind of things and how we could do it. The golf club did not hold interest in selling the building to us full stop, but yeah, there were definitely, we had some educated conversations with them around that.
So to be clear, Bryce, it was a definite no from the golf club. If I ring them, it's a definite no?
We could not reach terms of a deal.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Naylor.
Thank you. Just the presentation talked about the Scout toilet at our place and said that they said that was open to the public. Was that toilet considered as part of the assessment that was done in terms of location of toilets along that pathway?
Yes, that's the toilet. It's 1.5 kilometres to the upstream of the location considered. So the gap between that toilet and the Fitzherbert Bridge was considered. Fitzherbert Bridge toilet.
So are you saying that that's 1.5 kilometres from the bridge or 1.5 kilometres from Albert Street?
1.5 kilometres from Albert Street.
Okay. And just looking at the costings on page 15 and 16, under the 3.9 and under the financial information, it said that there were 2 main suppliers for the turnkey public toilets in the region. And you've said that the preferred supplier was $215,000. How much was it for the other supplier?
Circa about $70,000 more.
70.
70.
Okay, and do council get a quote from a local builder for things as small as this project?
We have in the past. A good sort of 5 or 6 years ago, we did a bit of an exercise around that. Far and away, the most efficient way of doing it and cost-effective way was to engage one of the 2 suppliers in a design-build contract to do it. I would have to try and drag out the cost comparison, but it definitely was not cheaper getting a builder. These guys, they manufacture them off-site. They deal with councils all around the country, and they literally bring them in, as a specialist facility. So it was considerably more quicker, efficient, and cheaper than local builders.
Okay, and what's the square meterage of the building that's proposed?
That's a very good question. I don't know if I put that in there. I don't know off the top of my head. I'll take a punt and say 30 square metres.
30?
13.
13. So another item in our paper on the Papaioia report for the whole units were less, for a whole unit is less cost than what's proposed for one toilet here. Is there a specific reason why it costs $280,000 to provide one toilet?
Yes, there is. So I guess that's a turnkey cost, which is important. So it's including design through to connections, the actual building itself, the concrete pad. It is the planting, etc. So it is literally a turnkey option for that. Sort of a challenging comparison with something like Papaioia. Papaioia had a lot of established service connections within it. It was already a housing complex. You get efficiencies on a unit by unit build by building a number of them. It's sort of, probably I would liken it, and it's not a particularly good example, but it would be like saying that a house and a garage on site had the same square metre rate, however the garage was a lot cheaper to build than the house, or rather conversely, the house was a lot more expensive than the garage. They're not quite the same. They might be the same size, they might be built by the same person, but they're not the same. It's very similar here. It's difficult to draw comparisons between a toilet and a residential unit.
Okay. Just the final question was related to also the comment in the presentation around the cost of the Albert Street entrance and seating. It suggests about $1 million, is that correct? Or do we have a total cost of what we've invested there?
I can just confirm, Councillor, the river entrance itself cost $295,000, including consenting earthworks, the concrete work, design, planting, decking and lighting. There was a total budget for the project of $465,000, but a chunk of that was used for purchasing cabling that related to the lighting projects along the river. At the time, there was a lot of supply chain issues around COVID, and we made the decision to buy the cabling up front because our electrical advisors were telling us we're risking not being able to get it. And prices were going up rapidly at that stage. So we have a large amount of cabling in stock for other jobs as a result of that, and similarly some bollards that we haven't used could be used on other jobs. So $295,000, $300,000 for the actual river entrance that's delivered down there.
Okay, thank you, that's helpful.
Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, guys, for explaining all of this. I think my question is probably about 2.2 and the user numbers. You've talked a bit about this, about how you did that count. I just wondered if, when we were counting the number of people, did we take the opportunity to ask them if they would have used a toilet if one had been there? Like, how do we know that the number of people walking by is the same as the number of people who'd want to use a toilet?
We don't, and no, we didn't. It was the survey was targeting a different thing.
Okay. I wondered if somebody could comment on the engineering risks that were raised in the public submission there about risks to the wider network, risks of odours, risks of not being consented for those reasons.
I'll give it a go. Whilst I've worn many hats here at council, one of them isn't a water engineer, but that would form part of consenting considerations, as we have to get a resource consent both with council ourselves and also Horizons, and they look at all of those kind of service connections, and we would have to address that through that process. So if it was not, if there was going to increase the cost in some way, or it was not feasible, then I would suggest we would, especially if it's not feasible, we wouldn't get a consent.
But what work have we done to this point to give us assurance that this is technically consentable? Because this public submission seems to suggest that they don't think it is.
The simple answer is a little, but not a lot. Is probably the best way. We've done some initial sort of work in establishing what kind of connection would be required and how we would and where the current infrastructure terminates and distances. We have not done any work towards looking at flows and some of those matters that were in the more technical of nature. We're literally only at a concept stage at this point. We haven't even got detailed designs yet. So all of that stuff would typically be worked out at that stage.
And if there were issues with that, that would be the same if we went with a golf club option.
I would suggest so, yes.
Okay. And just my last question there is about the adjacent toilets on the river pathway. So I'm looking at the map at 2.6 with the purple circles. Those adjacent toilets, are we seeing such high levels of demand and use in those toilets that would suggest a need for a toilet in between?
We don't have any data on the level of use of those toilets. This was about geographic spacing of the demand in that location, so I can't answer that question. We don't have counters on the toilets, unfortunately, Councillor.
Right. And are there any examples of reported antisocial behaviour at those toilet sites?
Actually, probably not. It's a little bit of a tricky one. While we're looking at as property look after the toilet and parks look after the parks, but there is some overlap. We have had occasional vandalism and not uncommon for us. It's a high maintenance. They're high maintenance assets, and unfortunately, people do treat them poorly sometimes. I haven't come prepared with any statistical information on reported issues on those toilets, and I don't know if Bryce has.
We haven't in the last 2 years, as Aaron rightfully said, we've had seen quite an escalation, I suppose, in vandalism and damage, especially to some of our public facilities like toilets. We have not had to address anything that I can think of in particular of any kind of substantial damage in either of those two sites, especially in comparison to some of our others, which we've had to address on multiple occasions. The one at the skate park, for instance, is 4 or 5 times in the last 2 years alone we've had to actually go in and address considerable damage.
Okay. Thanks for answering those questions, Madam Chair.
Councillors, I'll just ask if you can keep your questions brief, because we have got quite a big agenda today, and there have been quite a lot of questions asked already. Councillor Hancock.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, Bryce, Bill and Aaron. Just very quickly, Councillor Bowen has asked some of the questions which I was interested in. Just in respect of Waterloo Park, did I hear you say before that's 1.5 kilometres from Albert Street? Is that the distance?
Correct.
Okay. In the paper, it talked about that particular toilet is actually not very obvious, I think, for people using the river walkway. Is it an option perhaps to move that a little bit closer to the walkway?
It's situated as close as you can pretty much get to the stop bank already. It was built off the site with an agreement with the Scouts. They're built off the side of their building so that we could use the associated services that were already to the building. It can't get any closer to the walkway for the same reasons that the Albert Street one can't go to the other side of the stop bank. So it's right on a path entrance to the walkway there and right against the stop bank. But
great, thanks, Aaron. That's helpful. Now, do we have any commentary around issues with freedom camping at the other public toilet sites that are along the river walkway? Do we have any understanding of if there are issues there?
We're not aware of any.
Thank you. And just in respect of, I guess, just the current design shows the toilet facing Albert Street. Do you have any commentary just around could the orientation be changed to actually make that more palatable for the residents?
We could possibly explore rotating it so it would be facing down towards Albert Street, I suppose. That would probably be preferred than flipping it around to face the stock bank, just because that way, as people are coming from Albert, it's much more obvious with the door itself and that it's actually a toilet.
Thank you, Bryce. Thank you.
Councillor Zabellin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. Will these toilets be cleaned daily, or what's the frequency of attendance?
Yes, they'll be opened up by our cleaners and cleaned every morning, and then closed by our security company at night.
Thank you. Is there no possible way we could close that road or car park at night?
I won't say no possible way, but probably what I would say is closing legal roads is difficult. It requires consents to do so. It's not quite as simple as just putting up a barrier. We could explore at the actual end of the physical road, though granted it is on a road reserve, it may be a little bit easier to consider what we could do around that. But it would require a bit more exploring, and we would have to talk to NZTA, for instance, from that side of things.
Okay, thank you. Just another really quick one. Does the RMA protect a right to a view? Is that a permissible objection in a consenting process?
I don't know. I might hand over to Jono, who's probably much more of an expert than myself.
Jono, are you available to answer that question?
Yeah, through the chair. No, it's not. The RMA enables a plan to manage amenity, so visual amenity, but it doesn't provide any legal protection as such to an existing view.
Thank you. I just have one last really quick one. If there is sort of no appetite for compromise at all in terms of mitigating effects, and we do look at other alternatives, we must know what those alternatives are, having explored it quite thoroughly. Are there any viable alternatives?
Probably the only one that would warrant re-exploring would be the option at the golf club, and we could re-enter back into negotiations with them.
Right. Thank you. That's all from me, Madam Chair.
Finally, Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I picked up somewhere in the report or conversations around this that there wasn't to be any drinking fountain in this area, but am I correct on that, or is there actually a drinking fountain on the way as well?
Quite often we'll explore drinking fountains as part of our toilet facilities, especially in entrances such as this. The current design does not provide for one, but we'll be creating all of the infrastructure that would very easily allow us to add one to that. So happy to include that in the final design, if that's what council wanted.
Thanks. And in terms of determining whether or not council wanted that, would it be helpful to have a resolution to that effect, or are you quite happy to take it on?
Sure, let's have a resolution for that. That'll be good.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you very much. That's the end of questions. Now, councillors, I'm not going to move recommendation 1. In the interest of fairness, I'll see if anybody else wants to move it. If not, I'll be moving option 3. On my one. Can you press your... yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm
Councillor
happy to move option 1, seconded by Councillor Barrett.
Okay, so we'll allow option 1 open for debate first, and option 3 will be an alternate moved by me and seconded by Councillor Meehan should option 1 fail. So I will I'll invite Councillor Wood to speak to option 1 first. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the residents for coming in and submitting. And I acknowledge I'm in a bit of an awkward position here, moving an option which you're not comfortable with while you're still in the room. So I want to say thank you for the work you've put in, and thank you for, in short notice, once this report was released, writing a thorough explanation of your perception and your views on the option to council. And I want to say I understand it. I live near a public toilet. I walk by it every day on my way to work. So I have put myself in those shoes that you asked me to, of would you be comfortable living with a view of a public toilet from your property. I can assure you I'm very close to one. My main concern here, and we had this discussion as council when we were looking at the bus stops, where rightly, people are upset. They've seen around town that there might be vandalism of a bus stop. They might have seen an attraction of antisocial behaviour or other things. But just because there might be an issue with something, or a perceived issue with something, when many residents in the city experience the same problem, we didn't believe it was issue enough in and of itself to warrant not going ahead with it. And so what I mean by that is I've taken a look around town. There's public toilets visible from houses and residential areas at Papuia Park on Featherston Street, at Mahanga Kakariki Reserve on McGregor Street, at Coronation Park on Tremaine Ave, at Tākaro Park on Botanical Road, at Monrad Park on Highbury Ave, at Ongley Park on Park Road, just to name a few. And I appreciate those are all within varying degrees of how close they may be and whatnot, but all of those are visible when you stand and look outside a residential property. So I appreciate that it might be to some degree visually unseemly, but many residents in our community have to sit through that and experience it in their property, and so I don't believe that it would be fair for us to take an approach that one group of the community has a right above any other group in the community to not have to see a public toilet. As I say, I walk past one every day on my way to work. I've never seen any particular issues with it, but I appreciate that residents have that perception. In terms of demand for it, the officers have outlined quite clearly it's the second highest usage along along the river pathway. I use it regularly, as many councillors do, and as someone with a weak bladder, I'm certainly an appreciator of public toilet facilities. In terms of use of ratepayer funds, I can assure the residents, as councillors would know, I am a strong believer in reducing council spending, but as the residents acknowledge themselves, provision of public toilet facilities is core council business. It is core council infrastructure, and whether we put this here or somewhere else, it wouldn't be a reduction of cost to council. So none of the options being considered today would see us reduce that budget. In terms of antisocial behaviour, as the residents have outlined, they've reported to the police, and the police have dealt with the issue, and I would expect that to continue if a public toilet was placed here, and would hope that if there was a significant increase in antisocial behaviour, residents would engage with both the police and council to deal with it, much as if there's vandalism of any other public facility or antisocial behaviour attracted around any other facility, particularly in terms of freedom camping. Officers have acknowledged there hasn't been significant reports of that in other areas, but there are mitigations that can be put in place if we were to see that becoming a regular problem. In terms of the engineering standards, that isn't a significant concern of mine because, as the officer said, if it does come to pass that we can't do it because it doesn't meet engineering standards, well then it won't happen. So I'm sure there are many mitigations, automatic flows that the cleaner would, there's plenty of ways that we can get through that engineering standard. And just to say, I don't understand how putting it at the Manawatu Golf Club would be any better for the residents, given that is closer to their properties and directly in view of many of these houses, rather than further away and not on the angle that these houses face. So I'm not entirely sure why councillors are sort of discussing that as a better option, unless it's in terms of cost, reducing the cost to council because we'd be doing it in partnership. But in terms of the residents, I can imagine it would be far worse to have a public toilet directly in sight of their property rather than off about 40 metres to the left at the entrance to the river pathway. So I'm sorry I'm moving this, residents, and I hope you can appreciate I've explained where I'm coming from. I don't mean to do this to upset you or to say that I haven't acknowledged your concerns, but I think this is core work for council to do. And although I can appreciate it might not be the best looking thing, I'd be more than happy to entertain an amendment to rotate it 90 degrees to face the stop bank and then to have a sign on the back of it saying public toilet so that the public are aware that there is one there. Because I can appreciate you might want not to see people going in and out. But I'm not convinced as to the reasons not to go ahead with this and hope councillors will support moving ahead with the project as planned. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Barrett, do you want to speak now or you reserve? Okay. Mayor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, councillors, I'm not going to support option one, and I'll tell you why, and I just want to push back on Councillor Wood's comments. I think option three is our best option. There was quite a number of comments from officers that were, how would I say, we've explored this, but we haven't really. We don't have surveys, but we've got some feelings about where the demand is. I get all of that, and that's why we take the advice of officers. But actually, I've just rung the golf club, and they're up for a discussion. So I think we should be doing option 3, have a look at it again. Actually, Councillor Wood, we possibly could save some money, and you'd love that. So with a dual toilet, we've got a precedent being set at Fitzherbert Park where the Cricket Association and the council, we've got dual toilets. One faces to the users of Fitzherbert Park, the other faces out, and well fenced, well planted, faces out and for the public. We share the cost, we share the benefits. So at least explore that first, because I'm sorry, I don't think the officers have quite gone there that far. And I'm sorry, I don't want to say that, you know, I just think we can explore that. Now, we've had many instances in this chamber where we you know, in hindsight, if only we'd gone and asked that other council whether they'd like to do some shared services, if only we'd gone and asked those people if they'd like to be part of this. Well, this is an opportunity. So we may end up coming back to option 1, but let's look at option 3 and explore it properly, have a discussion. We can do it. So I'm not going to support option 1, and just I'll look for a seconder, but I would put up option 3.
Mr. Messer, I've already indicated that if this fails, I'll move option 3, and Councillor Meehan has
Great.
agreed to second.
Fantastic.
I
We're
think
on
you
the
may
same
have been
page. Thank
out
you.
of the room on the phone to the
Thank
golf
you.
club at the time. Councillor Meehan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say I won't support option 1. As you said, I support option 3. And I just wanted to touch on Councillor Wood made the comment about bus stops. We listened to submissions on bus stops, and wherever it was possible to move one, we moved one. So we did listen to the residents. We did listen to the community. And I think when we're talking about views and situations, especially when we're coming around toilets and bus stops and stuff, that if we listen to our community, they've bought, they've built, they've done whatever in these streets, we should listen to them, and if there's options there, there's options there. And as we just heard from the Mayor, he's talked to his friends at the golf club, and there's options. So we should look at it.
Thank you, Councillor Meehan. I will just make a comment on this now. I won't be supporting this option, mainly because I think that we haven't explored all of the possible options for an alternative location, and I'm not utterly convinced that a toilet in this place would actually be positive for the community, irrespective of the residents who clearly have concerns about it. I think, I think it's difficult when we're faced with a decision like this to please everybody. One thing I do think that re-exploring options could bring out is if there is public demand for a toilet, because at the moment what we've got is we've proposed a toilet, and I appreciate it was in the 2016 plan, but I respectfully suggest that most members of the public probably weren't aware of that. I think if we re-explore options, it gives the some time for members of the public who have an opinion about this issue to come to us with it. At the moment, we've heard the residents with, I think, to be fair, valid concerns. And, you know, before agreeing to a toilet in this option, I'd like to be really sure that there isn't a better option somewhere else. I agree with Councillor Meehan. We absolutely did push back on many, in fact, of the bus stops, and they were moved to other locations. And I think in terms of the potential, you know, nuisance factor, probably it's similar, bus stop and toilet. So I think there is precedent for us listening to residents and for reconsidering where these things are placed. And I see no urgency in proceeding with this. I think it would be very, very sensible to make sure that there weren't better options available. So that's why I've proposed option 3. Councillor Isabella.
Thank you. Thanks, Madam Chair. This has been a very interesting discussion. I think it does appear that the officers and the residents have engaged for a good year and engaged in good faith, it appears to me, I think, so far, and that's really heartening. And despite this, I think there does appear to be no appetite for mitigating actions or compromise. So I think there's very little that we can do in terms of trying to improve the sightliness of it that would be palatable or acceptable. It's just a straight no. We don't want to look at it. I think the nuisance stuff is stuff that we, you know, we've seen nuisance in other areas like the dirt bike riders up the Mangoni Stock Bank, and we just can't do anything to restrict access to those, but we could do it here. It's not that we can't do it, it's just that it's difficult to do it. So I just want to separate those two issues out and go, regardless of whether or not there's a toilet there, I think we could probably look into the nuisance and what we could do, the existing nuisance, at keeping that under wraps. But to the toilet point, and with the bus stops, we did look at that on a case-by-case thing. So we didn't sort of listen to all the residents at all the times. You know, we took all the merits and safety hazards and information for each different bus stop. And I just fail to see, looking at this map, how the golf course option is a less unsightly option. It seems closer to the houses. It's right across from them. So I'm just a bit confused as to why that's a better option in terms of the unsightliness, which is the untractable point for the residents. So I don't see that improves. I don't feel that that's a better option for what their core objection is. So, you know, where do we get to with that? I think I am going to support this because I think it's the best option that we've got based on the evidence that we've got in front of us. And that's where I'm falling with that at the moment. Really happy to listen to more comments and hear where other people are at. Thanks.
Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and just to outline briefly my rationale around supporting this as well, and to also thank the residents for coming in and sharing their views. And it has given us certainly one side of the views that are there. And I think while we could go through an exercise perhaps quite extensively to consult with the community, I think we would arrive at the conclusion that we already understand, which is that people do appreciate and expect amenity in public places and reserves. And the reality is there is quite a significant gap in the network, as has been identified by officers, and certainly in informal conversations and as a user of that area of the river network, it is one that is commonly commented on as having gaps. So while we could do a lot more fact-finding, a lot more exploring, I think what we would very likely end up with is back in the scenario that we are right now. As others have commented, struggle to see how moving the proposed block from 50 meters away to 15 meters away in any way addresses the core concern. So I think very likely we would end up literally back in this spot. The only thing that would happen is we would have spent substantially more officers' time, probably would have seen prices go up a bit. We probably would have seen more people frustrated for lack of amenity there. You know, we are well placed, in my view, to get on with the job at this stage. Other roads have this amenity already, so Maxwell's Line, Hearikatahi, Fitzherbert, Marumahanga. When we haven't seen outbreaks of freedom camping, we haven't seen huge spikes in antisocial behavior. And I think just on that point of antisocial behavior, we haven't really considered to what extent providing basic infrastructure and amenities actually supports pro-social behavior, because more people are coming into and using and enjoying those areas. So while we could spend another 6 months to a year reconsidering this, I think that we would very likely end up in the same position, but with higher costs. So I'd prefer that we hear and acknowledge the concerns of the residents, but that rather than drag this out and create uncertainty for a protracted amount of time, that we go ahead and proceed on the basis of the information we have today, which I think is presented by officers is consistent with the case that the current proposed location in option 1 is the one that we should advance with. Depending how this vote goes, I may have something further around drinking fountains just to acknowledge. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to clarify that the alternative recommendation, should this fail, doesn't specify that the toilet be on the golf club. It simply is talking about re-exploring construction location options. So there's no assumption that it will be the golf club option. Councillor Bowen.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for that clarification, because I think that's important. I absolutely think we need a toilet at the end of Albert Street. I want to be clear about that. I think Councillor Wood referenced that this is a really well used part of the amenity network. Our river pathway is really well used, and anybody who's walked with young children, and I'm sure older people as well, would know that being 20 minutes from a toilet is a really anxiety-inducing place to be. And this is an obvious gap in the toilet provision along that network. So I'm really clear that we need a toilet in that location. But I am concerned with the points that have come through in discussion about how well we've done that exploratory work around the options that are open to us. I think Councillor Barrett's absolutely right that the golf course itself might not solve the problems that the residents have brought to us, but it might solve some other problems like the staggeringly large cost of this facility. And so I'm interested to know what we don't know at the moment. I think for me, I don't have all the information I need to be comfortable with number one, thanks to the debate we've had today. I have to say that has changed some of my views as we've gone on. I also want to recognise the point made about toilets increasing pro-social behaviour. I think that's absolutely true. I think there was a mention in the report or maybe in the comments that the not providing a toilet increases the likelihood of people going in the bushes. And when you're 20 minutes from a toilet, that's absolutely sometimes the only option you've got. So there are good reasons for having a toilet there. We should do it, is my view. I just don't think we need to rush to do it now. I would be really keen to see this turned around quickly, because if the mayor can pick up the phone and talk to the golf club today, I don't see why this will take months and months to come back with. But on balance, from the discussion today, I'm happy to not go with one, go with three, explore those options, and bring back a proposal that also includes a water fountain and maybe a dog bowl. I'd like a dog bowl, if we're adding things to the list at this point. Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. No more speakers, so back to Councillor Wood for right of reply.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, councillors, for a constructive debate. I would say on the point of we don't have surveys, we've got a survey in 2.2 that shows 110,000 people a year are using it. It's the second most used entrance to our river pathway, so I don't know what more data we would need than that to make the call that there is usage of that space. I don't think for every single toilet decision we need to be surveying walking groups and thousands of other people. I think the evidence is there. 50 people an hour, every hour at peak times, I think is more than enough justification for demand. In terms of the golf club option specifically, I appreciate that it could be saving money, and I am all for that. So if this does fail, I'd be tangentially interested in it. But at the end of the day, in terms of the residents' concerns, that would be a far worse option because it would be directly in their line of view rather than off to the side of their property. In terms of the bus stops, the example I was specifically thinking of was the resident who came in with a concern about vandalism and antisocial behaviour, where for that reason alone we couldn't justify moving it because at the end of the day, anybody with a bus stop outside their property could make the same argument. And that is what I put to you here, is that anybody with a public toilet outside their property could make the same argument, well, I don't want it there. And so in terms of what the other options are, the rest of Albert Street is a residential area, so there's nowhere further up Albert Street we could move it without encountering this exact same issue. So I'm a bit, I hear where you're coming from in particular, Councillor Bowen, but I'm a bit baffled as to what the other options could possibly be. If we want to have a toilet at Albert Street, this is the option with the least impact on residential properties that we can get. Anywhere further up the street will have more impact. And so acknowledging the residents' concerns, I really don't see us coming up with a better solution in 3 or 6 months' time. And as Councillor Barrett outlined, all that will do will lead to us spending thousands of dollars more of officers' time and potentially ending up, obviously we'll miss out on this contract, so we'll probably need to re-tender it and go out and do it again and cost us more money. So I don't see it as a cost-saving measure. In terms of positive for the community, there's a barbecue area that we've invested significantly in there, which has high usage. I use it regularly, as well as many other councillors and many other people in our community. So it just seems a bit like we're overcooking this. This is a no-brainer. It's a toilet at an area of public amenity with one of the highest usages in the city. I can appreciate the concerns and I can appreciate wanting to respond and feel like we're doing something to make it better, but I just can't see how any of the alternatives would be any better. So really it's a decision now of, do we do it or do we not? And I appreciate if there's councillors who aren't willing to do it, absolutely, but I think the case is strong for going ahead with this. So I apologise to the residents, I really do. I can appreciate this is frustrating, but I hope you can hear where I'm coming from, that the case is there for us to go ahead with it. So I hope you support this. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So we'll vote on the recommendation that's in the paper, and noting that it has been changed to a recommendation to council. In your papers it's down as a recommendation to committee. And that's on advice of governance, that we are, the committee doesn't have delegated authority to require council to do something. We can only recommend to council on this issue. So the recommendation is that the Chief Executive proceed with the construction of a new single-pan toilet at the end of Albert Street within the road reserve, option 1, moved by Councillor Wood, seconded by Councillor Barrett. So we will take a vote now. Oh, sorry, Councillor Wood.
Just on your advice, does that wording need to change that the committee recommend to council to proceed with the construction rather than the chief executive proceed? Oh, apologies, appreciate it.
Thank you. So we will now take the vote. Thank you. And that has failed, 5 votes for and 7 against. So we will now move to the alternative, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Meehan, that the Chief Executive re-explores the construction location options to find a viable alternative location. There has been significant debate on this, so I don't really intend to allow further comment, unless anybody feels desperately keen that they need a further comment. Are you desperately keen, Councillor Byrne? Oh. I will allow Councillor Bowen a comment, but I don't want to open the floodgates because we've got a lot of work to get through.
It is more in the nature of a question, please, Madam Chair. It's that the recommendation in front of us says a viable alternative location. I'm mindful that the best location might be the one we just said no to, and I don't want to preclude that from coming back to us. If this turns out to be the best location, if we talk to the golf club and they say, on your bike, but a viable alternative location suggests not the one we've said no to. So I want to clarify.
We could go ahead with this and just revoke it if there wasn't an alternative location.
Okay, thank you.
So, and to be honest, I think that will open up a whole other line of debate. So I would prefer to just go with this for now. Okay, so if we're all satisfied that enough has been said, we'll take the vote. So this is voting on that the Chief Executive re-explores the construction location options to find a viable alternative location, option 3. And that is carried, 12 votes for. Thank you all very much. For those waiting on a toilet break, we will be taking a break in 15 minutes. Okay. We will move on to item 7, which is the draft health promotion policy approval to consult. And I will invite Lily Carto and Julia MacDonald, no, Lily, to come and talk to us about that paper. Thank you.
Tēnā koutou, councillors. Firstly, I'd just like to acknowledge the smoke-free and vape-free reference group members who made public comment today, Te Whatu Ora as well as Cancer Society. Their views and feedback help inform this review process. So before you today, seeking to approve this draft policy for consultation. This policy looks to replace 3 policies that Council currently delivers on. That is the sun protection policy, the smoke-free and vape-free outdoor areas policy, as well as the healthy beverages policy. And just to remind you, you had a workshop on this back in March this year, and I'll take the report as read and open for any questions. Ngā mihi.
Thank you very much, Lily. That's great. Just a question from me. In terms of the changes that have been introduced to the different policies that we'll be going out to consult on, are they all outlined in your report?
Yes, so the changes that were made in terms of each of those policies have been included, highlighted in the report, and they can be found in the analysis of options and clause 4 of the report.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Are there any questions? Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Lily. Just briefly wanted to inquire about the visibility of the accountability and monitoring mechanism that's in here. Am I reading it correctly that that goes to a reference group rather than to council or some other public body?
So the monitoring and review part of this policy, that we will work through that with reference group members in the implementation part of the policy framework. So if this policy does get adopted, we can flesh out the monitoring part when we come to the implementation plan.
And does that reference group already exist?
There is a smoke-free and vape-free reference group that currently exists, but the proposal is that that gets the scope, the mandate widens to include the other parts. So it would be called the Health Promotion Reference Group.
Great, thank you.
It seems there are no further questions, Elisa. Thank you very much for your report. Always a good sign when there's not a lot of questions. It was a very fulsome report. Thank you. So I'm happy to move that the committee approve the draft health promotion policy, healthy beverages, smoke-free and vape-free, and sun protection for consultation. I'll look for a seconder, Councillor Naylor. And just to comment that I think that putting all of the health promotion policies together into one package is a very sensible move. I think it provides an easier place for members of the public to look when they're wanting to know what our stance is on what we're doing in terms of public health. And I note that this is at the start of a consultation, so should any additional suggestions come from public or organisations around different elements, then they could be open to being included. So very happy to send this out for consultation. Councillor Dennison.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I was only going to just refer back to the signs and use of public places bylaw 2 that come through the Strategy and Finance Committee earlier too, which pertains to the signage for the vaping stores. And so just to kind of put a parallel how important that branding is to the protection and promotion of this issue that's captured in this policy, and the reverse sensitivity that we've had, that 300 metre setback for new establishments, but those current ones in place, there are examples, and of course the public have really voiced their concern about that. So that's the point I wanted to highlight. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you. Just to briefly comment, I think it's incredibly important that we continue to uphold and support well-being in the community. And on that basis, quite happy to support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. Any further comment? Okay. Yeah, no, I just agree with you all and ask for us to take a vote. So we're voting on that the committee approve the draft health promotion policy, healthy beverages, smoke-free and vape-free, and sun protection for consultation. And that is carried, votes for and none against. Thank you. So that takes us on to information of the minutes on page 45. So I'm happy to move that the minutes of the Community Committee meeting of the 20th of March 2024, Part 1 Public, be confirmed as a true and correct record. I'll look for a seconder. Councillor Meehan, thank you. Are there any corrections or... No? Okay, then we will take a vote on the minutes, please. And that is carried, 9 votes for and 1 abstention. Okay, let's move on to item 9, which is a Papayoa Place Social Housing Redevelopment Closeout Report. And we'll re-invite Bryce. Looks like you're doing a solo effort, Bryce, on this one.
Yeah, kia ora, councillors. I timed that. It was just farewelling the residents from Albert Street. And I believe my partner in crime, Bill, may have popped to the toilet, ironically. But that's okay. Papayoa Place, big success story, fantastic project. I'll anecdotally say probably my favourite project I've been involved in my time here at council. And I think it's genuinely a facility that council can be very proud of. And it's definitely one that I know I myself have been sought out by many councils around the country, different trusts and community housing organisations to, I guess, understand the learnings we have and in many ways, if not replicate it directly, actually look to do something very similar. So I think that's something we can be very proud of as a council. In terms of the project as well, went very smoothly, despite the challenges of trying to deliver it over multiple stages. Things like COVID happened in the middle, and that brought a lot of challenges. There was some really weird and wacky stuff happening around supply chains. I remember for stage 3, we weren't able to source letterboxes, for instance. So there were some really odd things like that were occurring, but we still managed to actually deliver it within budget and on time. And yeah, so I think, again, that's something that council can reflect on as a big success story. So happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Bryce. Question from Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Completely agree, Bryce, with your summary of this as an excellent project. I think it was just in comparing this closeout report with the next one that's on our agenda. The next one had some lessons learned, whereas this one doesn't. But I'm sure there are things that we have learnt from this project that we'll take into further social housing work. So would you like to tell me what those might be?
Yeah, that's a fair reflection. I guess there were some much more direct lessons learned, perhaps with the following paper than this one. One reflection could be by delivering it over multiple stages, for instance, whilst that helped to spread the financial load over many years, and I guess the context was it was something a bit new for council, doing what we were doing at that time. Not social housing, but refurbing a block like this. With that did mean that we had to re-engage the contractor for each stage. We spread it over time. There would have been probably a lot more efficiencies we could have gained in terms of delivery and cost if we had awarded one contract. Even if we delivered it over the same amount of time, we possibly could have got some learnings there and some improvements. That said, we were still we maintained a very strong relationship with the contractor, and we tried to mitigate that risk as much as possible by rolling them from stage to stage, essentially, to try and prevent them having to leave the site and come back. I think the other learning that I would probably take is, and it's a good thing, but it's also a learning, is we improved each time. So for every stage we did it, we took some little things around how the units interact with each other, some of the urban design points, some of the shared spaces, and we sort of improved that through different iterations. Perhaps upon reflection, if we had our time again, if we had done a master plan of sorts for that whole site, perhaps we could have addressed those right up front and looked to set the ship in motion rather than having to re-look at them each time.
Thank you. So, as has already been referenced today, with your sad departure from council and recognising that those comments aren't in the report, how will council capture those learnings for future projects?
we have done a full project closeout for this, and that does capture those lessons learned. So from an officer perspective and from Bill and anyone else delivering these projects, those are there. They are getting discussed, and whenever we enter into new projects, we are talking actively about lessons learned. Probably you can treat it as a omission from my report, perhaps, in that sense, as opposed to anything else.
Thank you, Bryce. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Councillor Barrett.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, Bryce and Bill. Just wanted to ask around build rate. So 85 units over 6 years, I think it's about 15 a year. And just, is that kind of maxing us out, or could we have a build rate in a future project of 20 or 30 units in a year, and how might we get there? The things we need to think about kind of jumping from this scale to that scale.
We definitely can, and there are examples of that around the country where you can do that, and that probably speaks to my point of because we delivered them in 3 succinct stages, we therefore treated them as 3 almost individual projects, if you will. If we'd actually entered into a project, we knew that we were going to build 200 units, you make plans for that, the contractor mobilises for that, and therefore with that comes efficiencies, and they can do things almost en masse a lot quicker. And so absolutely, I wouldn't say every housing project we need to do, whether it be 80 or upwards of houses, needs to take 5 or 6 years at all. In fact, I would expect that, all things other being considered, that we could do that a lot more efficiency.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. That's all the questions. Thank you, Bryce.
Thank you.
And Bill? I'm happy to move that the committee receive the report titled Papaioa Place Social Housing Redevelopment Closeout Report, presented on 28th of August 2024, seconded by Councillor Han. Okay. I just have a couple of comments to make. The first one is, agree with the remarks from Bryce. This has been a project, I think, of which we're all incredibly proud. And it's produced some fantastic outcomes for very many of the seniors that are living in the complex. So that's a tremendous thing in itself. On top of that, and it doesn't always happen, but when it does, we're very happy about it. It was delivered within budget and on time. So I think it's important that I acknowledge previous Councillor Susan Beattie, who was one of the instigators of this. And when I first came onto council, I was sort of roped in at a very early stage, and Susan had the project certainly by the scruff of the neck at that point. So acknowledgements to Susan. Also acknowledging our partners, Latitude Homes, who I think have done a fantastic job on this, and WT Partnership that managed the project really well. And acknowledging that we did receive, I think it was $4.5 million of government money to subsidise the ratepayer input. So all in all, and I think also the report doesn't mention the prizes that this project won, actually. It was a prize-winning project. It certainly has been something that we can be very proud of as a council and a city. Right, I'll just ask you to keep your comments brief, because I will be breaking in a few minutes for morning tea. Councillor Naylor.
Thank you. Concur with the Chair's comments. Certainly this is a project that we're all very proud of. Just a quick comment about the financials. With the $4.5 million shovel ready project, this the council's funding was $13.6 million, and when you look at the fact that that's produced 85 units, council's input to that is only $160,000 per unit, and that's not counting that, that's throwing the lounge in for free. So incredibly good value for ratepayer investment, and one which sadly we don't seem to have the ability to replicate going forward, with the estimates of Summer Hayes being way beyond that. But just wanted to acknowledge actually how good a value for money that is to our ratepayers, and what that will deliver for years and years to come.
Councillor Hancock.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. I just really want to, echo the congratulatory comments in respect the team that put this project together, really. 48 units turned into 85 units, massive improvements in terms of the livability of those social units, social housing units. All stages completed within budgets in their planned budgeted years. And from the report, I noted quality of life for the residents was a real focus for the project team, and the project demonstrated empathy and compassion for those people that were going to reside there. I guess probably the comment I want to make is that for the project team and for council, this is a very, very good demonstration of a project team being able to walk a mile in the shoes of our residents who are likely to have become residents at the in the social housing. And I think it really stresses and speaks to the importance of the well-being of our older residents in our community. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, colleagues, for your comments. I don't think I need to do a right of reply. So we'll just take the vote, please, on council receive the report, that the committee receive the report titled Papio Place Social Housing Redevelopment Closeout Report, presented on 28th of August 2024. And that is 11 votes for and none against. We will take a break now for morning tea, and at 11 o'clock we will be having a confidential workshop. Are we here or are we in the Missoula room for that? Where do you want to be? Mm-hmm. In the right. So I'm getting the nod from the Deputy Mayor that we're in the Missoula room for that, and the committee meeting will resume after at 1 o'clock for those of the members of the public who might be wanting to follow on.